This podcast is made possible by Avalara and Ledge.
Hello, this is Chris Greiner here with Zeta Global, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 1004.
Casinos have evolved from when I first started in this industry into what it is now. They've become, clearly we have gone through an expansion period in the industry where more and more jurisdictions became comfortable with the idea that, casinos are not evil and they're a good place where people can go have fun responsibly. And so there's been growth in the industry, and we definitely are part of that. Maryland opened its first casino in 2014. We came online, I said 2012, 2014, and we came online, like I said, in 2016. We've gone through, a growth period as a property and as an industry over the last 7 years, and I'll say that the coolest aspect and the thing I enjoy the most about this role here is that I'm managing different lines of businesses, right? It's not just a casino, but there's a casino, there's a hotel, there's restaurants, there's a theater, there are retail stores, and you have to figure out how to optimize everything for the benefit of the entire campus, right? So I'm looking at volume metrics internally for the casino, for the restaurants, covers, drop, handle, things of that sort.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Efraín Pérez Agosto, CFO of MGM National Harbor Resort. Efraín Pérez Agosto began his career on the lively casino floors of Puerto Rico, where his fascination with the gaming industry was first sparked. Starting with a succession of jobs, he quickly showcased his analytical prowess and passion for numbers. In search of broader horizons, Agosto relocated to the U.S. when his casino owner set down roots in Indiana. This move marked a pivotal chapter in his career as he balanced work while completing his undergraduate degree stateside before going on to pursue an MBA. It's one of the more original chapters we come across along the CFO path, and CFO Agosto tells us all about it right after this.
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses, and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
Hello, we're speaking with Efraín Pérez Agosto, CFO of MGM National Harbor. Efraín, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Glad to be on the show.
Efraín, as always, we're going to ask you to look back. And what we want to know is, what are some of those experiences you feel moved you along down the path to becoming a CFO? Where does your story begin?
So, yeah, Jack, I have a pretty unusual track, I think, to the CFO office. I actually started, I've been in the gaming industry for over 30 years. I started as a table games dealer in a casino in Puerto Rico, where I'm from. And it was meant to be, a part-time job while I was actually, going to college for accounting and finance. And I just loved it. I loved the industry. I got sucked by it quickly. And so I actually just stayed in operations for the first half of my career. I moved from Puerto Rico through other jurisdictions, such as Mississippi around the mid '90s, and over to the greater Cincinnati area, where Indiana was, opening casinos in the southeast part of the state.
Interesting. You didn't go to Vegas. You go to where the new development is around casinos around that period.
Yeah, it's kind of odd for someone like me who's been in this business for so long to have never worked in Vegas, but I had never worked in Vegas. I've been throughout the region for my entire gaming career. So it was in Cincinnati where I was able to finish my education and get my master's in finance. And I always knew I wanted to get to be a CFO role. It just kind of was the roundabout ways. I was enjoying operations a lot. Um,
Hey, can I ask you something more about that, about your early days? You were in college in Puerto Rico when you started working at the casinos, or was that even earlier?
No, so in Puerto Rico, the casinos, you only need to be 18 years old. So I was right out of high school.
Huh.
It was meant to be, again, a part-time job, and I was going to college at the same time I was dealing cards and craps at the casino at night. But like I said, I love the industry, and so I kind of put the college on pause to pursue this opportunity and come over stateside.
We have a lot of people who tell us I have a very unique story. I'm not your traditional. I didn't take the traditional path. You'd be surprised how many people tell us, but you did not take the traditional path.
That's right.
You become like a pit supervisor. You kind of climb the food chain of the casino pit bosses. Yes.
That's right. Yep, I got all the way up to being a casino manager before I finally made the transition into finance. Started in finance as a controller, working for Caesars in Ohio property, and it took someone taking a chance with me. Or I had some questions about how I was going to make that transition. I had gotten so far along that path in operations, and I'm thinking, how am I going to make this jump? And thankfully through collaboration, somebody took a chance on me, and I got a chance to get into finance as a controller. And from there, I just grew, right? And I think so. To me, when I look at a couple of points in my career, I joined MGM in 2017, kind of also in a controller type role, but it was the FP&A role. So I think the background in operations and having such an extensive background in operations gave me a really good insight into this business. And then the FP&A role that I had when I joined MGM, or later after I joined MGM, really allowed me to dive past the casino operations and into all the other areas that I manage and oversee as a CFO.
So and just to you were at Caesars for how many years?
So I was there around 4 years, Jack. It started around 2012, and I came over to MGM very early in 2017.
Okay. And you're like a controller at Caesars, where you were just explaining to us you get your FP&A experience though at MGM. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I just have to ask you about cash management in the casinos. Many of us are intrigued by this. What do you tell people when they ask you about that chapter of your career in regards to, the amount of cash that goes through casinos and the management of it? I mean, it might be obvious to some. It's not to me. How is the cash managed?
Yeah. It's so clearly we can have quite large sums where it depends on the jurisdiction as well, Jack. There's some certain jurisdictions will have different requirements for how much money you're supposed to keep on hand. But as a controller specifically, one of my primary duties was to make sure that uh, all areas of cash management as the cash circulates through the property, right, from the tables to the slots to how it goes down and gets counted and then gets back into the cage, which is basically our kind of our banking. For those of you that are not familiar with casinos, it's more kind of like a central banking part of the casino where all the different instruments, chips, and tickets from the slot machines get redeemed. So, you get there's a minimum requirement that you have to meet that you have to keep at all times, and then there's an optimal amount of cash that you have to try to identify to make sure that you can service whatever the business volumes are going to be for what you're projecting on any given day. So there's quite a bit of fluctuation and back and forward, but it's interesting, and then when you first get into it, it's a little bit of an eye opening. How much cash are you managing?
Yeah. As a controller, did you interact directly with like the cage management, or as they? I mean, or you step in there several times a day, or what? What's the interaction? And I'm trying to make the distinction. This is not a back office job in a casino. You're rather connected to the operation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a very operational type controller role. I was in the cage multiple times a day.
Yeah.
And definitely, through the weekends and at all times. Cage was a big part. So there's the cage, there's the counting room where the money gets counted. And then, for those casinos that offer casino credit, there's a credit function that has to be managed as well.
The cage, is there a cage manager, or what's the how is that whole thing managed, and is that under your finance, the operations of it and best practices? And
That's right. So it depends on the size of the operation. Some operations structure themselves with a cage manager, and they have different shift managers that report up to that cage leader, that reports to the controller or director. Some other operations, such as ours, is a much bigger operation. We'll have a director and a cage manager and several shift managers.
now I'm just gonna put an exclamation mark behind this statement I'm about to make, which is that from your very early days, though, what I think is probably apparent to us is that you were good with numbers. It was apparent to those around you within the finance operations of the casino that, hey, here's a young person who's good with numbers. So you made an impression.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm always good at numbers, and I've been working with numbers at every stage of my career in gaming, whether I was at a dealer and calculating payouts at a craps table to being in finance and looking at numbers from a different perspective. But it's always been very heavy on numbers.
Now, when you moved to the opportunities around casinos in the Mississippi region, are you moving with with Caesars or a large gaming company, or are you just looking for opportunities on your own?
Yeah, it was. So early on, it was smaller companies that were taking a stab at opening a casino in Mississippi, for example. Hyatt was the property that owned the property in Indiana originally. Later, Full House Resorts has owned that for the last 15, 16 years, I think. But it wasn't until I joined Caesars that I joined like a really like Fortune 500, large publicly traded organization.
And as you mentioned to us, you do go back. And you go to college in the States, is that right? Not that.
That's right. Yeah, it was in Cincinnati where I went back and said, "Oh, I got to get my act together here and get my schooling completed. And if I'm ever going to achieve this goal again to be a CFO."
And you grew up in Puerto Rico?
I did. I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I traveled to the U.S., New York City mostly, as I was growing up on my summer breaks, winter breaks, and such. But I didn't move stateside until I joined the gaming industry and moved to Mississippi back in the early to mid '90s.
And you do go back for an MBA. Now, is that when you're looking to advance yourself into more, FP&A, more senior finance roles? Let's say.
That's right. That's exactly what I had in mind. It's a means to an end. I wanted to get to be a CFO. I knew that having no experience in finance through my career and not having a finance degree of some sort was going to make it almost impossible for me to be considered for a senior level role in finance. So I understood that I needed to get that done. I'm glad I did. It was a very great experience going to Xavier University in Cincinnati, and I got a lot out of the program, and I achieved what I wanted to achieve through the program.
And let me just point that out. So you're going off to business school. You already know. You just said I knew I wanted to be a CFO, and you have the industry you want to make your mark on, more or less. You're going to stick with resorts. You're not wavering there. You like the business. You're going to stick with it. Am I right about that? It seems like you're pretty decisive from
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think, and that's important, I would say, and this may come up later, but you have to know where you want to go in your career and what are the steps to get there, right? I think
Yeah.
that was very clear to me. So I knew I could have stayed in the path I was in operations and probably I would have gotten to a more senior level role way quicker than I did. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted a senior level role in finance. And so it was identifying what steps I was going to need to take to get there.
Now, when you go step into the MBA classroom, are your classmates casino executives, or are you kind of a rare breed? And are you going to do any projects during your MBA time related to the industry you've grown to love, or?
Yeah, no, I was the only person working in casinos. I was, as you said, a rare breed in that MBA classroom.
There was a lot of intrigue around you, though. Am I right about that? What was some of the? What would they ask you? What do they want to know?
Some people didn't even fully understand what gaming meant. The to gaming in a different context, right? And I had to explain to them. Some other ones were a lot more well versed. By the time I got to my MBA program, gaming was a pretty mature industry in the greater Cincinnati area. But it was an interesting perspective to add, right? And I think just the diversity of the group, we generated a lot of value for the class as a whole.
You joined MGM post MBA after getting your degree. Is that right?
Yep. That's right. Yep.
So tell us about that. I mean, was it just an easy time to make that change and step into this new role at MGM?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I guess, funny how things work sometimes, right? I think the property was going through a bit of a transition, has just changed hands from Caesars to what was called later Jack. And someone from MGM, this property in National Harbor had opened in late 2016. Somebody had reached out and said, hey, we have an opportunity here. So it was kind of for me, a desire to be part of a bigger operation, right? Being part of, having spent time in New York City growing up too, I had a desire to get back to the East Coast. And being part of a brand new property of this size is something special, right? So it's kind of hard to turn that on. I was like, well, let's see what this is about. And one thing led to another, and next thing I know, I'm packing over, moving over.
Okay, well, I just want to highlight, before we move on, I just want to highlight some of your career milestones for our listeners. Again, you arrived into the Mississippi, Indiana area. You complete your bachelor's. You go back for an MBA, and with your MBA, you join Caesars there in the Midwest as well. You get promoted into that casino controller role at Caesars. At some point, there's a change of properties or what have you. MGM, you become part of the MGM operation, and you move east to the National Harbor franchise, which we're going to ask you about. As part of that organization as well, you come in as a director of casino finance, but you move into the director of FP&A role, the executive director of finance, and finally, of course, to the CFO role. But let's ask you about MGM National Harbor. Tell us about this operation, this large resort today. How big is it? What is it about?
Like I mentioned, it's a fully integrated resort here at the National Harbor. It opened about 7 years ago. It was about $1.4 billion investment to get this property built up. And quite honestly, like it's not like many other regional casinos that you see. This is almost like a Vegas type property in National Harbor, Maryland. Right, we have 150,000 or over 150,000 square feet of gaming, which includes over 2,000 slot machines, over 150 table games, a big size poker room with over 40 tables. We have a 300 plus room hotel and spa. We have several restaurants, anchored by our steakhouse, which is a partnership with the Botaglia brothers, which are well renowned. We have about 50,000 square footage of gaming space and another theater with about 2,900 seats. We've had entertainers such as Bruno Mars, Mariah Carey, and several other great artists have come through. Just to give you a size, in terms of finance and a number that may relate to your listeners, we were the highest grossing commercial casino outside of Las Vegas in 2022. And we came very close last year, right? So this is a pretty sizable operation in comparison to other regional casinos in the space.
Could you educate us a little bit about this business now? Over the last decade, how has the landscape for casinos and gaming changed, and why perhaps has that made this property so strategic?
Casinos have evolved from when I first started in this industry into what it is now. They've become, clearly we have gone through an expansion period in the industry where more and more jurisdictions became comfortable with the idea that, casinos are not evil and they're a good place where people can go have fun responsibly. And there's been growth in the industry, and we definitely were part of that. Maryland opened its first casino in 2014. We came online, I said 2012, 2014, and we came online, like I said, in 2016. We've gone through, a growth period as a property and as an industry over the last 7 years, and managing through the COVID piece. There's some inflection points up and down there, but and I guess we can hit that when we get to the strategic moment session.
But let's talk about how you look into this business daily. We'd like to know, what are the numbers that you enter the office with a cup of coffee in one hand and the other you're tapping your laptop trying to see where these numbers are. What are those numbers you look at daily? What are those metrics that are important to you?
Yeah, so there's two of them, right? It's the internal metrics and external metrics. Right? Internally, I'm definitely interested in the volume that we're getting through the business, right? And in all areas. And I think I'll say that the coolest aspect and the thing I enjoy the most about this role here is that I'm managing different lines of businesses, right? It's not just a casino, but there's a casino, there's a hotel, there's restaurants, there's a theater, there are retail stores, and you have to figure out how to optimize everything for the benefit of the entire campus, right? So I'm looking at volume metrics internally for the casino, for the restaurants, covers, drop, handle, things of that sort. And then yes, externally, I mean, we're a business that's basically we rely on discretionary income. Like this is the money that people save aside to have a little fun. So anything externally that may impact that discretionary income, right? Whether it be inflation, whether it be average consumer debt or average savings account balances or things of that sort, to give me some kind of a leading indicator for where this business may be going in the near term and longer term.
I would imagine the convention business, the conference business is somewhat predictive. You're trying to look ahead. Are we booking the types of events and gatherings that we need, to populate our casinos, or is it a little different? I'm assuming you want to be this marquee place on the East Coast where that could draw those types of large events.
Yeah, so this property is a bit different. So Vegas would definitely be driven. The main volume driver, I guess, would be conventions, hotel stays, and such. And they have 3,000-4,000 rooms in the properties in Vegas, right? Here is a much smaller room, right? Our room hotel tower, 300 rooms or 308 rooms. So we're much more of a frequency market, right? People just come in here, they spend a few hours having a good time, and then they go home, right? Not so much lodgers. We do host some big conventions groups from time to time, and our conventions is pretty robust. We got a pretty good our booking window, but for the main business in the casino, like we don't get a lot of lead into that.
So, how do you make sure that frequency and the type of customer you want at the table in the casinos? How do you know you're achieving that? Is it simply the draw each night, or do you pay close attention to certain economic developments that other businesses don't need to?
Yeah, sure, I sure do. I mean, and it does have an impact, even though this industry has proven resilient in previous recessionary periods, and I guess prior to 2008 also. But it definitely impacts us. Like I mentioned, we rely on discretionary income, and to the extent that the economy impacts people's ability to spend and have fun, it's going to have an impact on our business. Um, for the market that we're in, being also such a heavy government spend area. So government spend and the different, if there's, for example, a federal shutdown, that's going to be something that I'm paying attention to, right? But so federal spend in the area, and then intentionally we have a lot of experience in this business, right? We focus a lot on customer behavior. We find the best ways to reinvest in these customers, as you mentioned, especially the ones that are probably more loyal to us, and figure out how do we continue to enhance the experience for these guests and keep them wanting to come back and spending time with us.
Again, make a comparison for Vegas for us in terms of the people who they draw into their casinos versus who you're looking for. And maybe there are some similarities, whereas the largest percentage of those people come from only an hour away or 2 hours away.
So no, that's a great question. Vegas is definitely so one of the metrics that Vegas will look like or will look at that I don't necessarily look at. It would be inbound flights into Las Vegas, right? I don't necessarily track how many flights are coming in and out of DCA or Dallas, right, or BWI, because we rely on people that are within 120 to 180 miles of this property.
Huh.
Uh,
So, and when you do marketing, it would seem like it's important to to go over that span of miles. That's where you want your television advertising or your billboards or however you reach these people today.
Yeah, we definitely do that. We draft, our marketing media and advertising plan based on the demographics that we're after, and we look at customers from all kinds of different angles, right? And so we draft a strategy that's based on, hey, we want to pursue this type of demographic, this type of player from these areas, and so that's what we focus most of our resources on.
The customer experience, which is sort of what you were touching on before. The smartphone, is there a smartphone app, and are you rewarding your loyal customers?
Yeah. So they earn points just like similar to other loyalty programs. Players that come in through their
It might
activity.
seem obvious, but where does finance get involved in that? I mean, sometimes you're giving away too much.
I work very closely with the marketing team, and we touch base multiple times, a week. We have standing meetings on the calendar where we look at these things together. And, from my perspective, Jack, I think to me, it's not about not spending it. It's about spending it wisely, right? Investing it
Yeah.
wisely, right? And expecting a return from that investment. So when it comes to CFOs, I guess I'm a little bit more on the, our top line revenue in a smart way. I don't mind taking some risk. And we evaluate all that as we go through these meetings, and we assess what we've done and how that's working and how we need to pivot. And then one of the other messages that I drive with that team a lot is just to stay nimble, right? Like things can change quickly, customer behavior can change quickly, what our competitors are doing can change quickly. So we need to stay real nimble and plugged into what's going on and be able to adapt our strategies as needed.
Is AI part of your world?
When it comes down to providing a world-class personalized guest experience, I think AI may have a role to play in our industry. And there, I think to me that's probably going to be the biggest thing for my industry in terms of how we leverage AI down the line. But we're always looking for ways to elevate the customer experience, and whatever tools are available, AI or otherwise, is what we want to look at.
What and I never did ask, but is there any numbers or anything you make publicly about how large a property or how much money it generates annually?
Just the gross gaming revenue, I can share it because that's public information. It's well over 800 million a year in gross gaming.
Now, let's see. You've been CFO since 2022, so you've been in there 4 years. As you step into the role, since your 2-year tenure here, is there a particular number that you have sought to raise the profile of? Is there a metric, something that the organization you felt was misunderstanding or not paying enough attention to, that you somehow, whether it was at meetings, you just began talking about at the start of the meeting instead of at the end, trying to draw more attention to it? Or maybe it's a dashboard that you said, I'd like to see that number regularly on our screen. I don't know, but is there something that you've sought to better educate the organization about? Or maybe it's just a particular team. Anything? Any number, any metric, anything?
Yeah, again, it would be based on customer behavior, right? So frequency of trips, average spend per trip. It's not something that's like top of mind for most people, right? They don't think about, well, how was the top line revenue, or what was your expense structure? But it's focusing more on kind of those somewhat leading indicators about volume and what may lie, and how do we improve it? And
How do we get that customer? He comes 5 times a year. How do we get him here 10 times a year? How do we get him here 7 times a year? And you're coming back and asking for more marketing dollars. And I got to tell you, that customer, he might have come, less times this year. I mean, there is a direct connection, clearly.
yeah, I mean, absolutely, yes. And I think what I find myself trying to push is to try to be more proactive than reactive, right? It's like and that comes with taking some calculated risk along the way and getting some people outside of their comfort zone a little bit. It's like we don't know what the outcome's going to be. We have a good idea what may happen, but let's take a chance here and let's take a chance there, and let's see if we can drive those metrics up.
Okay. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, so Jack, I'll think of two, right? The first one, and likely one that we've heard before, is managing through COVID. And I know that's 4 years back, but we seem to still be dealing with some of the effects on that in this industry. And I think to me, the challenge was taking a business that has never closed its door before, and overnight getting an order to say you have to close your doors. And so walking 1,000 plus or 3,000 plus employees through what that looks like when they never experienced that in their careers. So that was the first part, right? And now you're in closing periods where you have no revenue coming in, you have some expense where you have to try to figure out how do you minimize your cash outflow and manage through that period of time where there's no income coming in. And then at the same time, understanding we're a highly regulated environment already, right? And COVID introduced a whole new set of things, right? And you try to identify what kind of competitive advantages are going to be there just from a health and safety perspective. And how do we make sure that both our employees and our guests are safe? So in a casino, what does that look like, right? So it's basically, with the spacing, reconfiguring your entire casino floors, right? Which is not a small endeavor, and going through that process and reopening your doors 3-6 months down the line. That was definitely a unique experience that I always recollect and something I feel I learned from. And then what happened after it is just how the consumer behavior changed, spending patterns. People were more focused on experiences versus acquisitions of things, and how we benefited from that and how we drive that, and then some normalization of that. And there was a supply chain issues that happened, right, and the inflation that followed thereafter, how that impacted the business and managing through that. So I think there was, to me, when you talk about strategy, there was shifting strategies through every stage of that thing that you had to be like really nimble about it and adjust to quickly if you were going to stay ahead. More recently, we had an incident which is public with MGM last fall, where some malactors um, basically held us hostage through a cyber incident, and our company took a stance and decided not to pay this ransom. So that had an operational impact, and being able to or saying all of our systems are offline, and now we have to operate this business on a manual way, which is you know far from what we've done anytime in the recent past. And then within finance specifically, it was understanding when we have restaurants to run. Yeah, how does that impact the supply chain, and how do you work with vendors to get product in here and into our outlets, right? And how do we manage a cage that's highly regulated and we have some laws to follow, on a manual form, and none of the systems are working, and make sure that we still remain compliant with everything we're supposed to do. That was quite challenging and a long several weeks, but we managed through that, and I think.
Tell us something about how that first occurs, though. Is it, and again, I'm assuming it's some sort of virus that the system's been infected with, and you can correct me, and they come back and say, hey, we'll get rid of the virus, but you're going to have to, and your systems will come up again. But how extensive was it? Did it just lock up the whole, your whole network, or what happened exactly?
Yeah, these malactors, they just through social engineering, they're able to start building puzzles and put information together that continues to unlock doors for them. And of course, this is way more technical that I have the ability to speak to, but
Yeah, me neither.
uh,
But
but in essence, the outcome is the same. Like we had to find a way to isolate
yeah,
this issue and isolate our access, and we made the decision like, hey, we're just gonna get our systems offline so they can keep roaming through things and we can protect the information that's important. And um, with that, it meant that we nobody had access to anything. Right? It's like I don't have access to email. I don't have access to systems that I use on a regular basis to perform different tasks.
was the ransom number made public? Is that something you can share with us?
It was, I think it was $30 million.
Was it debated as to whether to pay it or not pay it?
Yeah, listen, that's a conversation that happened in a room that I was not in, but I can tell you that we decided to incur additional expense to the ransom. Right, we made public that we spent close to $100 million, and we said that on our earnings call.
Yeah.
Um, we prefer to go that way than just to say we're gonna pay the ransom and trying to get out of this. And I think the Wall Street Journal did a really good job in their article going through the cyber attack incident and kind of our story through that. So I think if someone wants more information on that, that'd be a great point of reference.
You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co. That's ledge.co to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift. We want you to think back your first 30 days as a CFO, your first 60 days as a CFO. And we're going to give you a pass to go back in time, and you get to tell yourself something you didn't know when you first took over the leadership role. What is it that you would tell yourself?
I would tell myself this is not going to be as easy as you think it is, right? So coming into this property, the unique thing is I started at this property. I moved away from this property through a promotion opportunity with MGM, and then I got a chance to come back to the property as a CFO. So I'm thinking, well, I already know the people, I know the market, I know the property, right? And then so I have this plan well laid out in my head. This is what I'm going to do in 12, 18 months, writing the results and business outcomes I want to achieve. And it just wasn't such. Like I guess 30, 60 days or very quickly into the chain, it became evident that it wasn't going to go as I had originally planned to do it. Right, so I think I just had to be more patient with myself and others, and kind of grasp really the totality of what this role entails, before I was able to push harder in the direction I wanted to go.
We talked about your MBA. You mentioned how you were certain you wanted to step into an FP&A role. I'm wondering if you can recall, was there a time you actually had to raise your hand, or you had to do a little lobbying for yourself, because I think time and again, finance people find themselves perhaps in a holding pattern when it comes to getting beyond the accounting. Sometimes there's an extended holding pattern.
Yeah, so for me, it's interesting, right? So not coming from the accounting background, but something similar, maybe to the other extreme is, which I had no finance experience in this industry, right? I have a degree in finance. So it was trying to find the opportunities that were going to give me exposure with those decision makers to say, hey, he is capable. We can take a chance on him. And making sure that I took advantage of those opportunities. So, thankfully I have mentorship along the way and people that open doors, but ultimately, the effort and the outcomes are on me. And so make sure that I was fully prepared, and raise my hand and say, hey, I'm not afraid to take that chance. And, I'm going to jump in there head first if you give me a chance. So, yes.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. What's something generally people don't know about you? Maybe it's just your colleagues, something about you that most people might not know.
I am an aspiring bass player.
Does this go back? Is this 10 years old?
No, this is 2 years ago. Music has always been a passion. I played music growing up, and I played different instruments. But it's something that I put aside for a long time. And you felt like I needed another outlet to express creativity, foster creativity, and stimulate that side of my brain, if you will. So, a couple of years ago, I decided, hey, I want to learn how to play the electric bass guitar, and so I've been at it for the last 2 years.
Do you have a favorite musician, a bass player?
So, I like I Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I have such a wide range of musical taste. Like I like music in general, and I like just about every genre there's out there. But yeah, I get so much. My aspiration would be to be able to be a good bass guitarist, even though Flea is more on the rock kind of deal. But I like just the improvisation and how the instruments come together and just create this musical.
Efrain, we always like to ask for a resource, and it could be a book or podcast, a Netflix streaming series. Doesn't have to be related to business. It might be something you escape with. Anything?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to lead a book club here with our leaders here in this at the property, and we just finished one called Extreme Ownership. It's a little bit older book, but it's Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Lee
Yeah.
Babin. I didn't know how I was going to feel about the book. I never had the privilege to serve in the military before in my life, and so clearly they're U.S. Navy, but the applications to business and how they approach that, to me, was very relatable and something that was definitely in line with a message that we've been driving here about owning our businesses and financial stewardship in that sense.
Well, thank you for that. We're up to our final question where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we're interested in your priorities as CFO for the coming 12 months. What would those be?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a couple of growth initiatives that we feel are going to continue to propel this business forward. So I think focusing on getting those growth initiatives to completion over the next 12 months is important. And then on the other side of that, we work in a market where the labor market is very difficult. Right, Maryland has the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. I think it's 1.9 or somewhere around there. Um, so being able to make sure that we have, and also I would say it's not an area where you get a lot of it. Like in Vegas, you can always hire dealers, and there's a good pool of candidates. Here, there's not such a thing. So it's continuing to evolve on how do we look at talent, bring talent into the business, retain it, foster and develop it. So that work will continue over the next 12 months, and then you just continue to manage through the inflationary pressures that we're seeing, and we're seeing in multiple areas on our business. So.
Efraín Pérez Agosto, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOthoughtleader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.